A town surrounding a lake within a crater is on alert. At the center lies a flower that's taken root. A villager explains how it's converting the lake water into a saline solution, choking out the aquatic life they rely on for sustenance. Some villagers tried to vanquish the flower, but after one succumbed to their injuries, the elder mice hired a nomad to deal with the threat. Unfortunately, the nomad sent his disciple instead, a young woman. Are you excited for the recap already? Let's do this. When she arrives, the villagers can't take their eyes off her. She's the only human they've ever seen. Her hairless body a wonder to their eyes. She's used to the stares by now and proclaims that she's Belle Lablac, Tiziano Leblanc's student, and she's here to slay what lies in the lake's center. Master Shredder directs her toward the tentacles protruding from beneath the water's surface. The villagers are happy to hear the girl agree to take on their troubles, but are taken aback by her eagerness to feast on the flower flesh. She takes her shirt off, gets a running start, leaps off the dock, and begins running along the water's surface. The creature reacts, and she's dragged below by one of its tentacles before launching herself back onto land with the severed tentacle. Belle confirms that it is indeed a Negroni, a flower squid with antlers, which makes sense on a spiritual level. She grabs her buster sword Runding, using it to block a tentacle strike before using some form of magic or something to transform the seemingly wooden blade into something with an edge, allowing her to sever several tentacles and attack the creature's main body directly. Unfortunately, this releases a shower of salt water before the thing slowly dies. It turns out she can talk to the damn thing, which she only does after mortally wounding it. It tells her that it just wanted to spread its seeds, so she ends up taking one with her, as well as a piece of the flower flesh. On her way home, Belle tosses the seed into a river, so that someday, maybe its offspring can terrorize an entire village too. When she gets home, she whips up a dish for her and her master, Cian. Afterwards, she wonders why he didn't go instead, and he hand-waves it away, stating that it's not his role as an Enola, an instructor. They discuss moving on and continuing their travels, as Belle is worried about being captured by the army of insatiable emptiness. She asks if they'll ever meet anyone like her, but Cian dismisses the idea since he's never seen nor heard of another of her kind. So he tells her to go on a journey, to Park City, and to go through the trials of becoming a nomad herself. That night, her sword Runding begins to glow. When she grabs it, she's shown a vision of herself as a girl, surrounded by people disgusted by her appearance. She runs away toward a castle, where she finds the sword chained up in a storeroom. When she touches it, the chains disappear as it glows red. When she exits, she's attacked by a guard and defends herself when the sword speaks to her. A second guard ascertains that she's doing it for the sword. Then she's put in a room with the sword. Then she wakes up back in her room in bed with the sword and says she's glad it understands. That morning, she tells Cian that she'll take the trials and become a nomad. Outside, they square off for his final lesson. He reveals that nomads carry a curse and that his curse makes him incapable of fighting unless he's teaching somebody, apparently, and that he'll pass down the curse through blood. So they both cut themselves and press their wounds against each other's. Cian's face becomes blurred, and Belle's memories of him begin to fade. He explains that this is totally what's supposed to happen, and anyone who questions this convoluted process is dumb. Even though she'll forget everything about him and have no memory of their time together, the only thing she needs is the lessons he taught her, which she'll remember, but won't remember. And who cares if it's cohesive? It doesn't need to be. All she has to do now is kill him so his legacy lives on, even though she'll quite literally be erasing it by killing him. Later, in some kind of glowing rock forest, Belle wonders whether she was born from some sort of stone egg and looks to the sky to see another world. Perhaps she's not even from this planet. As she lies down to rest, an onlooker in a tree is pleased to finally have found the girl of reason. The amulet around her neck lights up as she wakes up. A rabbit appears and tugs on her sleeve. She offers it some of her drink, though it seems uninterested. Thinking nothing of it, Belle decides to continue her journey to Park City. When she arrives, the inhabitants all whisper about her appearance as she heads the tavern. The tavern keeper lectures her on the way of things, how the city is divided into a good and evil class. Belle is suddenly struck by memories of Cian. though she can't actually remember. There's a commotion, and Belle turns to see the rabbit child thing surrounded by ruffians who are apparently of said evil class, intent on ending the little thing. Belle brandishes her blade, but when she goes to strike, something holds her back, and she ends up breaking the boys' swords instead of landing any blows. When all their swords lay in pieces and the boys run off, the tavern keeper tells her to skedaddle, because the good old boys will be there to take her in soon. He mentions something about swords being unable to grow after being broken in such a manner, alluding to some idea or property suggesting the metal is alive in some way. Belle isn't able to evade law enforcement. She's carted away to the dungeon until they can ascertain what exactly went down. Due to her time spent in prison as a child, she isn't too beat up over it, even though she can't even remember her time as a child. She realizes that being unable to cut anything must be her curse, and remembers that she can't remember seeing. Belle decides to bust down the door and asks the guy who put her in there to grab the guard who caught her as a child. At the tavern, a shrouded figure appears in the doorway. The tavern keeper is shocked and refers to them as Adonis. Apparently they aren't supposed to be outside, or something. Their concern lies with the broken blades, so the keeper tells them some of the boys are staying upstairs. Outside, the army of insatiable emptiness waltzes through the streets. They're zombies, just zombies. The keeper mentions something about adding to their ranks. The guard, Gaff, gifts Belle a decked-out house or something, and gives her a dog tag since wielding a sword without one got her locked away. She declines at first since she wants to become a nomad, though Gaff tells her she first needs to serve the king. Belle says that her curse is causing her some performance issues, though she ends up accepting. The rabbit child has somehow made it inside, and Gaff is unfazed, even calling it good luck. Later, Belle has a bath and decides to let the rabbit join her. Totally not creepy, and she assumes it's mute. The next day, Gaff takes her to see the king, and some disembodied voice tells Belle she must entertain God to complete the rite of contracts. The king does God's will, so... The throne is some cancerous sword that continues to grow and is also a tree. The voice tells her that the priest king resides inside, and it turns out they're the disembodied voice. They have another head on their chest for some reason. Gaff urges her to bow, but before she does, she draws her blade and complains about the tree not looking at her. The king wonders why she wants to complete the trial, and she admits she desires to find out about her roots. The king accepts this reason and tells her she has one opponent she needs to beat, the guard whose sword she broke as a kid. Shan, it turns out, is alive. He bids some woman to fix his sword since Belle broke it. They talk about some stuff. The girl of reason and the army of insatiable emptiness. Meanwhile, Belle faces off against the guard. Apparently, his blade's seed grew his new sword. The details are very murky and never explained. She worries about being unable to strike him due to her curse. And she's right. Sort of. She hits him without damaging him. Instead, Belle disarms him, and seeing no other option, she breaks his sword, causing him to become enraged. For 2 seconds. The crowd disavows her, but she passes the trial. The king tells her to observe her curse to receive a blessing. The disembodied voice tells her that breaking swords stops their growth, but she already knows that. Cian seeks an audience with the king, who turns out to be his older brother. The rabbit child thing turns into a humanoid rabbit while Belle sleeps and monologues. At the tavern, the boys who attack the rabbit talk about using sacred ashes given to them by Adonis to repair their blades. One of them stole the rabbit's pocket watch to lure it out, which works better than expected as it teleports into their room. It uses some sort of magic to give them the illusion of being burned alive. Gaff tells Belle that the evil boyos are planning to raid the part of the city where her adopted parents live. She isn't allowed to join the guards to save them, but she goes anyway. She doesn't find anyone there and chases them out of the city, where she cuts down the brigands as their leader escapes. When she goes to free the residents from their cages, she finds her sword cuts through them with ease. Her parents thank her for saving them, and she finds out they have a bio daughter now. At first, she's resentful, but that disappears a moment later when she discovers her name is Bellin, or Belle's sister. Belle tells them she intends to be a nomad, so she can't stay with them and departs. Back in the city, She discovers her amulet is missing, but immediately resolves that she'll never find it and carries on like nothing happened. It turns out that one of the brigands stole it, and suddenly the rabbit appears and offers to trade his pocket watch for it. He teleports to Belle and wonders if she lost something. So she lies and says no. He introduces himself as Kitty the All and already knows her name. He thanks her for caring for Kitty the Nothing and vaguely answers with a platitude when she asks if they're related, then leads her to a bar for nomads. Inside, he bids she listen to the song he requested, but Belle is confused. Why would the woman sing if they aren't growing crops or building something? Since that is normal and needs no explanation. Apparently, the woman sings her name, and she figures that her parents knew the song and that she'd end up there someday in this specific circumstance. The rabbit disappears, leaving the amulet in its place, and Belle breaks down. The next day, she visits the king, who pays her for her deeds by weighing her sword on the scale, of course. Belay and Gaff talk while they walk. He tells her that the other top solists are a mermaid, Tiziano, who changes their gender, and Adonis. As soon as he mentions his name, Belle turns her head, to see Adonis getting rocked in the face. While Belle waits for her next mission or assignment or task or whatever, she finds more animal plant abominations and remembers her run-in with Adonis. Apparently, he stole a dead person's sword and refused to give it to their next of kin, which led to him getting accosted by the guards. Adonis doesn't grow his own sword and uses those of deceased solists, according to Gaff. And one day, Belle goes to feed the little gremlin plants and finds Adonis, one of the top 4 solists, getting his ass beat yet again. She notices her little plant friends lying dead in the street and goes ape. She whips out her blunt-ass blade and breaks the would-be solists' swords while cursing them out. Belle helps Adonis back to his place, where she finds a dead crow plant, a sign that he recently received word of a family member passing. She offers to help, but Adonis says he needs to head out and see if he's picked for an assignment. Adonis says something about bamboo, which turns out to be his messed-up dog. The creature swallows Belle whole, and it turns out there's an entire room inside the thing, like a little living TARDIS nightmare. Once they're both inside, Bamboo heads to the palace with them in tow. Adonis reveals his collection of stolen swords, and his spell, a question mark, written after the previous owner's spell. It doubles as his totally sick nickname, The Question. Belle tries to check out the sword, but he stops her, which somehow confirms her suspicion that he can't grow a sword. Bamboo makes it to the palace as the king finishes his speech. Tiziano is mentioned, and Adonis reveals that they've turned to the dark side and teamed up with the underdogs, which is the group of ruffians Belle ran into when she arrived in Park City. The king announces their names among many. Both of them are drafted into the same band, and they train in preparation for an assault on the underdog's lair, the catacombs. The opening act is the first on the scene, and Belle and Adonis are to follow. That night, Cian meets with the rabbit boy, Kitty the All. The bunny threatens to kill Belle if she does something outside the parameters of an undefined set. The next day, Belle, Adonis, and their fellow soldiers head off to battle. When they get there, they learn that the opening act bombed their performance, so they get in position and prepare for their assault. Inside the cave, spellcasters set up wards, and the vanguard makes contact with a giant spider creature. After defeating it, they're quickly overrun by a swarm of tiny spiders hidden on the corpse. It's a trap. Adonis sees a mysterious figure before it disappears into the ground, taking over their water ward spell thing. A blade breaches the surface of the cave floor and wreaks havoc on the solists. The others retreat in a panic, and Belle is separated from the rest. While wandering the tunnels, she runs into Benedictine, who freaks out when Belle sneaks up on her instead of announcing her presence. Benedictine berates her for not helping Gordon, her boyfriend, when he suddenly appears from the shadows. But he's not himself. He's undead. The bull brain swings his axe, and Benedictine loses it. Belle tries to help, only to be ambushed by Gordon. She turns and strikes. To her surprise, her blade cuts him. She turns to find Kitty, the bunny, who just so happens to be there. Benedictine freaks out and swings at Belle when she tries to stop her, only to break her sword when it connects with Belle's blade. Kitty explains that mermaids are basically emotional parasites, who reflect others' traits, becoming their entire personalities. So now that Gordon is gone, Benedictine is lost and begins to feed on Belle's mental state. Screams come from behind as Guinness and the band's handler run from something. They regroup with the others after calming down and head out when Benedictine hears something. They make it to a secret door, which Benedictine can just open from sounds or something. When Belle hears Adonis's voice, she rushes down the hall to find a dead soloist and Adonis exiting another random door. He tells them of a lake up ahead, with some sort of show about to go down. Adonis says he's been working with the underdog's conductor. They and the top dogs all share a common enemy, Tiziano. So they head to the lake and find a structure in the center with a bridge leading to it. Tiziano sits atop, raising the dead from the bottom of the lake and orchestrating a fight between good and evil. But when Tiziano notices them lurking about, she sicks the zombies on them. When they turn to run, a little bug boy appears and tells them to follow before disappearing. As they run, Adonis gets Bamboo, who can just appear out of nowhere, to cough up swords for him. They break after one use, which would explain why he collects them, but is completely untenable in the long run. They make it to another secret door, which Kitty booby traps after they enter. It turns out that the bug boy is the underdog conductor, the same guy who kidnapped Belle's parents. He tells them how Tiziano approached them for an alliance against the top dogs. Apparently, when Tiziano saw Adonis, she started going nuts, since he broke some terrible news to them in the past. The bug boy proposes they join forces against Tiziano. After some arguing, they agree. The bug boy takes point as the conductor and appoints Kitty, a neutral party, as the director. They end up giving him his pocket watch back as an incentive. He then turns to Guinness for the role of libretto to plan their strategy. The handler priest guy says he's a pianistus and can't wield a sword because of his mask and chain or something. A catman approaches Adonis and asks about his hands, only to be dismissed. Belle wonders how they know each other, and it turns out that he's Adonis's father and their clan isn't really on either side, neither good nor evil. The conductor gets them in formation as the enemy enters the room through the cracks. The libretto, Guinness, comes up with a plan, and they decide to make their stand on a bridge by setting up barriers on either side. Due to the zombie water spawning thing, they easily slip underneath the barrier. Luckily, they planned for this, and they set up a trap. However, Tiziano's forces aren't letting up. It isn't nearly enough. Adonis loses his gloves while fighting, and Belle notices the swords he's wielding begin to wither, which would explain the gloves. Benedictine swoops in to save one of the underdogs, only to get slashed in the eye. Belle goes Super Saiyan and mows down multiple zombies in a rage. Using their mermaid parasite power thing, Benedictine's voice pitches down, and they magically switch their sex, taking on a more masculine appearance. Belle recalls hearing about this change occurring because of choosing to become a reflection of what is mirrored in their minds. Guinness proposes luring Tiziano out using deception, and the conductor agrees. They start to cut off the water sources inside the cave to cut off Tiziano's power source. Or are they zombie spawning pools? Belle wonders how Adonis's dad knows the caves so well, but he plays it off as some spiritual sight looking inside to see clearly, or some other heinous explanation, which could be better served by simply saying they can see in the dark. Adonis tells Belle they're headed for the Garden of Death, otherwise known as the Celestial Cemetery. When they arrive, they stop just outside the structure in the center, and Kitty begins setting upwards around the area. The pianistus protests. They're in a cemetery. Why the hell would they decide to make their last stand fighting zombies in a cemetery? Nobody responds. They all stare in silence. The hordes arrive, and the wards don't seem to hold them back. Guinness and the conductor discuss something without saying much of anything before they fall back towards the structure. Tiziano pops out of the ground and cuts one of the conductor's legs off. Belle and Adonis rush to grab him before Kitty sets off their trap, engulfing the entire chamber in flames. A few moments later, 3 giant blood-filled zombies appear. They release the blood to create zombie-spawning pools as the others gear up for a fight. Tiziano goes for the conductor, lobbing Guinness's arm off in the process. The priest pianistus tries to protect him, only to be run through. He goes mask off and dies immediately following. which is to be expected. Adonis and Tiziano square off. Belle notices the mermaid's sword fusing with her body. Adonis stabs Tiziano and breaks the blade off at the hilt. He continues to embed blades in her body, but nothing seems to slow them down. Suddenly, he's engulfed in blood and dragged into a liminal space. Belle and Kitty follow. Tiziano floats around the strange pocket dimension, laughing as Adonis slashes her over and over again, the blade swallowing the mermaid's body. Belle decides to help out and launches her blade at Tiziano, stopping them in their tracks long enough for Adonis to cut through her skull, though it isn't enough to kill them. Luckily, Belle catches up with her blade and breaks Tiziano's sword, finally ending the brutal battle. Thank you guys for sticking till the end of this video. Make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit the like button for more videos like this. Cheers!